validate his position. Oh, thank you, Chris. Was that you, yeah? Recording my meeting, bless. So it would have been a very empty kind of Buddhism if Nichiren had aimed to validate his position by historical documentary proof alone. In fact, Nichiren often cited 3 proofs to justify the ultimate value of his teachings. This is Nichiren here. He says, in judging the relative merit of Buddhist doctrine, I, Nichiren, believe that the best standards are those of reason and documentary proof, and even more valuable than reason and documentary proof is the proof of actual fact. Now, anyone who knows me and has had the a moment of me when I've talked about Buddhism, I've been screaming from the very start of my practice, don't believe a word I'm saying. Please, please, please experience for yourself. And this is what Nichiren's saying here. And even more valuable than reason and documentary proof is the actual proof, is the proof of actual fact. So that means experiencing them great shifts yourself. So actual proof has been an axiom of faith for the SGI members, who have proven the efficiency of faith, practice and study in Nichiren Buddhism through transformative experiences in their own life. A curious glance at any of the SGI publications in any country across the world will highlight the importance of personal experience as a test for the value of chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. For Nichiren, the Lotus Sutra's importance lay not in merely the documentary proof we have discussed thus far, but in how it actualized the complete philosophical basis for the revelation of Buddhahood, the highest life state for ordinary people. The Lotus Sutra was supreme on this basis, but this did not come from a surface reading of the colorful stories and imagery. It came from a deeper reading of the text, which drew upon Nichiren's predecessor's own insights on the profound meaning lying beneath the cosmic interplay of fantastical characters. This is why SGI members are not actively encouraged to, at least initially, read the Lotus Sutra or focus on it as a primary text. This is because relying only on the Lotus Sutra would most likely lead us to interpretate it from our own limited perspective and a superficial level. Now, me and Chris, man, I remember we read the Lotus Sutra in 2020. We read it in 1 month, and boy, it felt like reading some kind of anime theater piece. But it's profound to understand how deep and how many hundreds of thousands of years people have tried to understand the core meaning of what kind of all of these stories and metaphors mean. So Nichiren's deep understanding of the Lotus Sutra came from his own profound contemplative, sometimes described as bodily reading of the text, which in turn was inspired and indebted to great masters prior to him, Genyo, Mayalo and Tiantai. Nichiren did not suggest the Lotus Sutra was perfect or absolute in and of itself. He revered it because of 2 outstanding principles which he elicited from it and which he considered could relieve all suffering, transforming society and realize the Buddhist state in ordinary people's lives. The first of these he found residing in the 2nd chapter of the sutra, the expedient means chapter. Now, if anyone knows as well, when I chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, sometimes if you're around me, you'll see that I chant 2 different sections just before. And this is kind of what SGI members kind of do when you become a bit more grounded in Buddhist practice. So there's 2 sections of the Lotus Sutra that we actually chant before. And kind of, I guess, out of all the 88,000 teachings of Buddha, these are the most profound. So that's why we recite them. So this is where he kind of talks about this. So he says the first of these he found residing in the 2nd chapter of the sutra, the expedient means chapter. Tiantai, a Chinese Buddhist sage, had previously drawn forth from the Lotus Sutra the concept of Ichinin Zanzen. We're getting deep. We are getting deep. Then again, I started to read about this on my 3rd week of Buddhism, so I trust that you're going to be with me here. So 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. In essence, this was a framework based on life, the environment, the individual, casual factors, and 10 key life states that indicate we all have incredible potential in each life moment to respond in a huge multitude of ways. The 10 life states, also known as the 10 worlds, states of beings ranging from hell, hunger and anger to rapture, learning and realization, were importantly mutually interconnected to one another to allow the individual to draw from any one of them the state of Buddhahood, which is the condition of compassion, courage, life force and wisdom. So let me give you my concept of that. In Buddhism, we have 10 life states. We kind of understand that every range of emotion and experience can range from 10 life states, from hell all the way to Buddhahood. And it's saying here that, and this is what I really love about Buddhism, within the life state of hell, the seed of Buddhahood still remains in that. They're all interconnected. And even with Buddhahood, the life state of hell is there. So this is, first of all, the first reason you can never judge no one, because they still have the potential of Buddhahood in whatever life state they're currently expressing. And that really, I really resonated with that at my when I kind of first understood this. Although this concept was crucial to Nichiren Buddhism, it was still in what he called the theoretical part of the Lotus Sutra, and was only made real in the essential later section of the Lotus Sutra within the 16th chapter. During this 16th chapter, the lifespan chapter, Shakyamuni Buddha reveals that he did not attain Buddhahood under the Bodhi tree in India in his present lifetime, but reached Buddhahood an infinite length of time before in previous lifetimes. Nichiren was clear, though many had misinterpreted him, that this did not mean Shakyamuni attained enlightenment at a fixed point, however far in the past, but that the state of Buddhahood, along with the other 9 life states, are eternally abiding features of existence. With this clarification in the 16th chapter, ordinary people could reveal their greatest self in this life moment. So bear with me, what is he saying here? He's basically saying in all other kind of sects of Buddhism and all the other sutras, he was basically saying you could only attain enlightenment if you kind of give up this life and you become a monk and you live in a monastery or a mountain for they were saying you had to basically do it for like more lifetimes than grain of sands on this planet. You know, that was literally what they were told, and that's the understanding. They've got to surrender and give up, and you've got to kind of give everything to humanity, but you could never actually attain it in this life. And they basically, you know, they would pray to Shakyamuni Buddha or to Amina Buddha that one time in a future existence they would be born in the pure land or like to the Buddha world somewhere. You know, from a Christian perspective, it would be heaven. But true Buddhism and the Lotus Sutra and what Shakyamuni's true intention was, and what Nichiren managed to understand by really in the 13th century reading the Lotus Sutra, was to understand that no. It's not about a future or a past moment. It is in this present moment that we can attain enlightenment and we can reveal our truest and highest potential. And this really kind of was mind-blowing, you know, 3,000 years ago. The idea that a peasant could have the same status as a Buddha, let alone like a lord or a Fred or someone important. So this was really groundbreaking, whether you're a woman or a man as well, which was very kind of crazy there. So let me read this section again. With this clarification in the 16th chapter, ordinary people could reveal their greatest self in the life moment. It is these 2 chapters, the 2nd and 16th, that SGI members recite morning and evening, known as Gongyo, before they begin their core practice of chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. We will consider Nichiren's understanding of the Lotus Sutra later in the chapter, but for now, let us fast forward to our modern age and the current research on the Lotus Sutra's origins. Now, let me just take a sip. So, our modern understandings. So it is still common in SGI meetings for lecturers to refer to the Lotus Sutra as the penultimate teaching produced by Shakyamuni Buddha and his highest creed, his final masterpiece after 40 years of instruction. And yet a cursory glance at the evidence paints a very different picture. Before looking at the research, let us consider one point which is patently obvious when one reads the sutra. The stories are fantastical and imaginary. How could Shakyamuni extend his tongue across the universe? How could heavenly God suddenly appear as a giant jeweled stupa broke from the earth? For the faithful in the first millennium of the Common Era, these powerful images may have seemed a true record of the past. Yet even to a child in our current world, they are clearly works of fiction created to illustrate a point. Daisaku Ikeda affirms in the Wisdom of the Lotus Sutra that events described in the sutra are not factual, but that they represent an aspect of our enlightened life. It is also acknowledged that when they speak of the stories as if they are real, Ikeda and the study department members do so only for the sake of convenience. Nichiren too saw the Lotus Sutra in allegorical terms, something we will return to. Oh, this is getting into some of the facts. If you've got a pen or a pad, some of these you want to write this down now. The oldest surviving version of the Lotus Sutra dates from 286 CE and is a Chinese translation of the original Sanskrit. So that's the oldest version ever found. Evidence of earlier Sanskrit forms exists from the great Mahayana sage Nagarjuna Jr. I always struggle, even in my head, reading that man's name, but he's a very important person, who mentions it extensively in approximately the 2nd to 3rd century CE. In Akida's early work, Buddhism, the First Millennium, he acknowledges studies that indicate the Lotus Sutra could not have come into existence any earlier than the 1st century BCE. In both this work and in the 1990s, The Wisdom of the Lotus Sutra, Akida affirms his belief in a direct connection between Shakyamuni and the Mahayana Sutras. But he sees further academic research as appropriate, and that regardless of the outcome of historical research, the profound essence of the Lotus Sutra could not be tarnished. J.M. Walsh, a member of SGI USA, has written 2 books that tackle this subject in detail with a meticulous scholarly approach. I am indebted to him in ciphering through the current research on the origins of the Lotus Sutra and acknowledge his role in much that I convey in this chapter. So, who created the Lotus Sutra? The Mahayana movement, which the Lotus Sutra is a fruit of, has often been described as a lay movement of ordinary Buddhist practitioners living in everyday society, who began to stand up against an increasingly dogmatic and atrophying monastic order which controlled not only the religious order but access to the teachings and ultimately the attainment of Buddhahood. And that's like this is what happened when Shakyamuni passed away. Obviously there was just like these gangsters, man, these brothers that were like, yo, I'm gonna take this power for myself and control people. And that's what he's talking about here when he says like the religious order, the monastic orders, and it became increasingly dogmatic. And the truth of Shakyamuni's teachings, which is like, yo, that peasant cleaning like the Lord's toilets, he's exactly the same. No one wanted to hear that back then, you know. So they tried to switch that up and make it so that only the bloodlines and we basically still see it everywhere today. In all religions, it's very, very rare that a religion really encourages the lay member and tells them that they're the exact same as the founder. However, the idea that lay believers were instrumental in the development of Mahayana is mainly supported by scholars. Lay believers are me and you, by the way, just like ordinary members of society. You know, we're not disciples. We're disciples in a sense, but we're not like, you know, priests. We're not giving up our life completely in like a celibate way or anything. You know, we take up the faith. We understand. You know, we're bodhisattvas. However, the idea that lay believers were instrumental in the development of Mahayana is mainly supported by scholars in Japan, whereas elsewhere in the world it is met with skepticism. It seems most likely that the sutra was work of members of the monastic order working within the existing system. Nagarjuna, mentioned earlier, who was a highly significant figure in uncovering, reformulating, propounding the Mahayana movement, was a monk. The Mahayana Sutras included the Lotus. The Mahayana Sutras, including the Lotus, have many descriptions of visionary experiences that most likely derived from the deep meditative experiences which were more readily available at the time to a trained monastic. The creation of the early Mahayana literature does not seem to have been as a result of an organized movement, but could have been initially produced as practice aids in a particular monastic community that were later recomposed as sutras. These works were mapping out new innovative territory, but were not distinct from the main Buddhist community at the time. Only with the work of Nagarjuna and others were these works assembled, codified, and possibly recomposed, leading to, as their popularity grew, a Mahayana movement. Certainly, the Lotus Sutra reflects a sense of heightened tension between early Buddhist monks and Mahayanists, lay or monastic. In the second chapter, 5,000 arrogant early Buddhist monks, nuns, and lay believers leave the assembly where they had gathered to hear the Buddha. The Lotus Sutra's 13th chapter describes 3 powerful enemies who will persecute those who uphold the Lotus Sutra. They include proud and boastful monks, forest-dwelling monks greedy for profit and support, and white-robed laymen respected and revered by the world. In chapter 10 of the Lotus Sutra, we find the passage quoted by Nichiren. Since hatred and jealousy abound towards this sutra, even when the thus come one, Buddha, is in this world, how much more will this be so after his passing? Where did the Lotus Sutra come from? Modern scholars place the birthplace of the Lotus Sutra in the kingdom of Gandhara and Bactria between modern-day Afghanistan and Pakistan. These territories had, for many centuries, a tradition of Zoroastrian worship. That word is a mad one. Zoroastrian worship. The first monotheistic or dualistic involving a fight between good versus evil, non-tribal religions. This is a time far before the development and spread of Islam to these lands. Gandhara and Bactria also came under Greco-Macedonian influence, ruled by the successors of Alexander the Great. In the 2nd century BCE, Buddhism was being actively propagated in the area. J.M. Walsh suggests an interplay between Zoroastrianism and nascent Mahayana ideas. For example, the mythical savior, Buddha of the future, Maitreya, who features in the Mahayana texts, resembles Soshayant, the future savior of Zoroastrianism. The religions of the Fertile Crescent, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam would also be influenced in their development by a savior concept first derived from Zoroastrianism. So Zoroastrianism is some old school root religion, like long before most of them. Around this period, Greek craftsmen in the Gandhara also began to create beautiful lifelike images of the Buddha. The formalization of Mahayana took many years, but seems to have fully developed once the Kushan dynasty took control of Gandhara and Bactria in the 1st century CE. At the time, when Mahayana sutras written in Sanskrit make their appearance, Kusha was thriving and expanding its empire south to more traditional established Buddhist areas, encouraging the flow of texts and monastics. The late Shin Yatomi, study department chief of SGI USA and a posthumous master professor of the Soka Gakkai study department, referred to the Lotus Sutra, according to scholars, as having been composed in Kusha between the 1st and 3rd century CE. So is knowing this a problem for Buddhists? Because a lot of this was brand new to me. When I first became a member of the SGI and I got into Buddhism, you know, everyone was saying the Lotus Sutra, it's like, you know, it's the last words of Shakyamuni. And even though it says every single chapter of the Lotus Sutra starts with, thus I heard, something like that, isn't it, Chris? Something like that, thus I heard. And so you know that it's like one of Shakyamuni's main disciples reciting what he heard. But, you know, I truly thought it was so connected, but it's made it very clear that it's kind of like, there's an unbroken link from Shakyamuni to all of his sutras, actually. And, but yeah, is knowing this a problem for Buddhists? So if we take the current consensus that the Lotus Sutra was created in a Himalayan kingdom, independent of Shakyamuni, many centuries after his passing, does this provide an existential threat to Nichiren Buddhists and the SGI? Certainly for followers of Nichiren Shoshu priesthood, I would suggest that it does. They stress an unbroken lineage through successive high priests to Nichiren and on down to Shakyamuni as author of the Lotus Sutra. So that sentence alone already proves, and I'm not to diss other religions, but already proves why a different sect of Buddhism, such as Nichiren Shoshu, their power is in that, you know, they are directly connected to Shakyamuni. But let's read what it says here. They stress an unbroken lineage through successive high priests all the way to Nichiren. And there's high priests alive today, you know, in 2021. So from 2021 all the way to 1222 when Nichiren was born, they're stressing an unbroken lineage, which is all you got to read as a basic book and realize that's not possible. And then from that all the way back to Shakyamuni and the Lotus Sutra. But a basic person can now realize that can't actually, it's not true. So let me read this again. They stress an unbroken lineage, and this is the same, by the way, with many other forms of Buddhism, you know, whether it's like Zen or they believe that they go straight back to Shakyamuni. And this is why for me as a Buddhist, and I only read this in 2021, man, it really blew me away, but luckily the author really ties it back up. So they stress an unbroken lineage through successive high priests to Nichiren and on down to Shakyamuni as author of the Lotus Sutra, a pure unbroken line passing the heritage of faith is key to their inclusiveness, sense of superiority, and their often purported claim to be true Buddhism. SGI still at times refers to its own lineage. In fact, SGI UK at the time of writing this has begun to include a lineage of Buddhism on the inside cover of their monthly magazine, The Art of Living. Likewise, the main international website, sokaglobal.org, has Buddhist lineage as one of its tabs. However, SGI can hardly claim to have an unbroken lineage, at least in a continuous chronological sense. The Soka Gakkai was founded relatively recently, and this always blows people away. They're like to me and Chris, "Whoa, man! Like your faith is only like 100 years old. Like how?" And you have to go deep. So the Soka Gakkai was founded relatively recently in 1930, and since the split with the priesthood, which is in 1991, we spoke about that last time, I believe. It will go into it more. Has shone a light on the actual historical reality of the transference from one Nichiren Shoshu high priest to another over the centuries in the book The Untold Story of the Fuji School. And now if you want to get deep on that, that is one of the most profound books I've ever read. The Untold Story of the Fuji School, and that's by SGI USA. And it talks to you about basically from when Nichiren Daishonin passed away and he transferred everything to his main disciple, his main brother, Nikko Shonin. It's about what happened from then up until how Buddhism found its way in SGI USA in the 90s, which is obviously like an 800-year difference or something. And it's so unbelievable. So yeah, The Untold Story of the Fuji School. Evidence of child high priests and successional disputes make it clear a pure unbroken lineage is a myth. In fact, SGI's approach to a lineage is emphasized as a spiritual inheritance embodied in the appropriate action of their three founding presidents, Makaguchi, Toda, and Ikeda in the modern era. So the SGI, we recognize from Shakyamuni, it is a spiritual inheritance. And that's what it means for us to awaken to our profound, like, oh wow, I recognize myself as a bodhisattva or as an indigo child or as a starseed, whatever you recognize and feel most comfortable calling yourself. It's like I don't need to have like the bloodline and all the certificates back to Shakyamuni. Like, it is like the inheritance. It is the moving on of that vow. It is the heritage of spirituality moving through them, now through us, whether it was Jesus or Muhammad. We have taken on that spiritual inheritance. So that's what I really loved about the SGI as well. And regardless of it being the SGI, that understanding of that I'm inheriting something here, man, whether it's like what Marcus Garvey was doing or Malcolm X, or like it wasn't for nothing. Like, I am inheriting that myself. I'm going to stand up myself, just like Shakyamuni would have, just like Jesus, not that we're trying to be saints and prophets here, but it's that energy that we need to be inspired by. No reference is made to the individual who actively introduced Makaguchi to this Buddhist practice. Likewise, if the Lotus Sutra embodied the most profound Buddhist teachings, could it lay claim to have inherited the spirit of the Buddha without having a direct connection to him? A aforementioned SGI UK publication, The Art of Living, states, the Lotus Sutra contains the essence of Shakyamuni's teachings, which is suitably open language, not to directly attribute the sutra to the Buddha. Very important, the words we choose. The Lotus Sutra contains the essence of Shakyamuni's teachings. It's not going to say it's Shakyamuni's teachings because the brother wasn't there. You get me? So it's the essence. Nichiren's progressive approach. How we view the Lotus Sutra is intrinsic to this approach, and Nichiren's own view of the sutra can point the way. As discussed earlier in terms of the treasure tower, remember we saying this earlier, Sally Smith, you are the treasure tower. Yeah, that's what we were talking about in the first one. As mentioned earlier, in terms of the treasure tower, Nichiren did not take the Lotus Sutra as a literal dogmatic text that could not be questioned. He saw it most importantly, as embodying profound life teachings. Another example is the story of the Dragon King's daughter found in the Devyata 12th chapter of the Lotus Sutra. In the opening of the eyes, Nichiren writes, when the Dragon King's daughter attained Buddhahood, this does not simply mean that one person did so. It reveals the fact that all women will attain Buddhahood. In other writings, Nichiren acknowledged no one has ever seen a dragon that he clearly wants to draw. In other writings, Nichiren acknowledged no one had ever seen a dragon, and he clearly wants to draw a universal principle of female empowerment from this story. Furthermore, Nichiren did not finish with propounding the superiority of the Lotus Sutra compared to other sutras. He divided it into a theatrical and a central part and placed the 16th chapter above all other chapters as the preeminent teaching. In the Blessings of the Lotus Sutra, which is a Gosho, he writes, bear in mind that the 28th chapter of the Lotus Sutra contains only a few passages elucidating the truth, but a great many words of praise. The process of extracting deeper meaning from the Lotus Sutra did not finish there. For in a number of writings, he considered the Lotus Sutra, based on what is appropriate for the era, to have fulfilled its purpose and to have no further practical use on a literal level. Now, in the latter day of the law, this is Nichiren's writings, now in the latter day of the law, both the Lotus Sutra and the other sutras are of no use. Wow. Only Nam-myoho Renge Kyo has the power of benefit to lead to enlightenment. So he's basically saying it's very powerful, all these stories are amazing, but let's forget the idea that we have to be so connected to it. What was the guidance that I read from the beginning? It is only the chanting of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, because that means It's only the action that we can take. It's only action now. It's like there's no more like dwelling in the monastery or in the mountains or in these like stories. It's like taking the essence, the true heritage of what was being said here, and creating the action. Yeah, the chanting of Nam Myoho Renge Kyo therefore supersedes the Lotus Sutra entirely. As Daisaku Ikeda writes, from the perspective of the implicit meaning of the Lotus Sutra, taught by Nichiren Daishonin, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo is the essential teaching, while the Lotus Sutra is the Nam Myoho Renge Kyo is the essential teaching. We begin to see in Nichiren's teachings a blueprint for a progressive and developmental approach to the sutra. This process does not begin with Nichiren, for Tientai's theory of Ichinen Zanzen 3,000 in a single moment of life in the 6th century CE drew out a new detail to Tientai. Kamajura's preeminent Chinese translation of the text allowed Tientai to develop his theory, as only as Kamajura's Lotus Sutra translation does one find the 10 factors that are key to Ichinen Zanzen and are recited in SGI Gonyo recitation 3 times. In other translations in Chinese, Tibetan, and in existing Sanskrit manuscripts, a different or shorter list of factors is subscribed to. Tientai was influential by Nangajura's teachings in developing his philosophy. So, multiple Lotus Sutras. At this point, we can step back to see that the evolving meaning of the Lotus Sutra points to, in a sense, multiple Lotus Sutras rather than just one text. In his book, Waking the Buddha, and if you've got a pen, write that down. That's one of the books if you want to know more about the basics of Buddhism. Remember, you've jumped into the deep end with me, but you'll find all the easier books easier now that you've had these sessions. Angelica, that was the most beautiful moment. I just saw that. In his book, Waking the Buddha. So that book really is like, if you're overwhelmed by what I'm saying here, you want to know about just Buddhism and the different, that is the book. You know, I read that in like a day. In his book, Waking the Buddha, Clark Strand beautifully takes this concept further than even Nichiren and SGI have so far. Strand is a Buddhist writer and former Zen monk who stands outside of any specific religious tradition. His eloquence on the SGI movement is all the more powerful in the fact that he is an impartial witness rather than an SGI member. And I really think that's something important for people that are trying to understand Buddhism and just understand what it's all about, is to read stuff that isn't always written by Daisaku Ikeda or, you know, members of the SGI, or even something like this, which is still written by an SGI member, but to read stuff which is completely by someone who's kind of like, you know, impartial. So again, Waking the Buddha. In his chapter, Even to the 50th Person, he interviews SGI General Director Masaki Masakai. Masakai clarifies to Strand that it was a mistake to suppose there was only one Lotus Sutra, and that Second Soka Gakkai President Toda taught about the Lotus Sutra of Shakyamuni, the Lotus Sutra of Tientai, and the Lotus Sutra of Nichiren. Masakai states the essence of the various Lotus Sutra is of course the same, but the way in which the sutra needs to be presented depends on the condition of the age and the capacity of the people who read it. But Strand then develops Toda's theory further. My feeling is that there is a contemporary expression of the Lotus Sutra based on these, and that this is what the three presidents of the Soka Gakkai have appeared in the world to teach. So just to quickly, there was, you know, 1930 was when the SGI was found by a man called Tusaburo Makaguchi. He was about 40 years old, and he took on his disciple Jose Toda, who was about 19 at the time. And then when World War II came, Babylon basically came to them and said, yo, you need to basically pray to the Buddha and put these talismans outside of the the Soka Gakkai buildings, and you need to basically stop believing that you are the Buddha, basically, really simply. And they both went to prison together, and it was Makaguchi died in prison, and Jose Toda, he survived, and it was in prison he was reading the Lotus Sutra. So this is like, blows me away when I was reading this. You know, he was like, how old would he have been? He would have been about 40 maybe, I believe, in prison, World War II, in a cell, and he got given a copy of the Lotus Sutra, and he said, I don't want this, and he sends it away, and it kept on coming back. It came back 3 times to his cell, and so he thought, bun this, let me read it. So he reads it, and he reads it with his entire soul, and he understands 2 things. He understands that life is the Buddha. Like that was the very simple thing he realized, that Buddhahood and like the Buddha is life. It's not Shakyamuni or Nichiren. And he recognized as well, his other kind of enlightenment was that he was here to help to spread that. And so this is what it's talking about here, that Clark Strand, the author of Waking the Buddha, is saying, let me read it in his own words. But Strand then develops Toda's theory, Jose Toda, the person that survived the prison and then kind of started the Soka Gakkai even further with Daisaku Akida, who's alive today. My feeling is that there is a contemporary expression of the Lotus Sutra based on these, and that this is what the three presidents of the Soka Gakkai have appeared in the world to teach. With Toda's doctrine that Buddha is life itself, and that's what he realized when he was in prison. Oh damn, like Buddha is life. And I know it might seem simple to us as like spiritual people who have like grown up in the 20th century, but like that time in Japan, especially in strict Buddhism, like that is just, it was a no-go. It was like that cannot be true, that can't be right, like there's no way. So that was like massive. So with Toda's doctrine that the Buddha is life itself and Akida's central philosophy based on the dignity of life, we have new contemporary expressions of the Lotus Sutra's core message. So that basically the Lotus Sutra's message from all the way back to around Shakyamuni's time, the three presidents or the three men that really resurrected Buddhism in the 20th century, is that the core essence of the Lotus Sutra is that the Buddha is life, and that everything is based on the dignity of life of each human being. Which again, it seems kind of basic to us, man. We know this, but it is truly like unprecedented for this time and for Buddhism. Because before it was like, you know, you can have a bit of the Buddha's aspects, but not all of them, or you can have a bit of Allah's aspects, but you can't be the whole of Allah, or you can't be all of God. You know, like God, how can you be all of God when He create, like you're part of Him? But no, like Buddha is life itself, and that all life has profound dignity, and we're all. It was very profound. Let me read. Strand takes this further. Strand takes this message even further, referring to the new Lotus Sutras always developing to ensure the message remains alive. A new sutra is born when it travels heart to heart, reigniting its meaning in that society. That means so much to me, that sentence, and I love that. That's true Buddhism to me. A new sutra is born when it travels heart to heart, reigniting its meaning in that society. Like right now, this is the Lotus Sutra being alive in the cosmos by having this conversation and us just being that bunch of potatoes rubbing up against each other and trying to understand who we are. This is the heritage of Buddhism alive right now. We don't need a church or a priest to look after us and to preside over this moment. You know, we are Buddhas, you know. So a new sutra is born when it travels heart to heart, reigniting its meaning in that society. Strand sees the spirit of human revolution as taught by Daisaku Akida, empowering individuals based on the common human value of the dignity of life, as this era's full manifestation of a new Lotus Sutra. In recent years, Akida's novelized account of the development of the Soka Gakkai has been described as a sutra for our age, and I can truly attest for that as well. Like, so Daisaku Akida, who was the disciple of Jose Toda, who was the disciple of Tsusabaru Makaguchi, the three presidents. Tsusabaru passed away in prison because he was like, "Bun Babylon, I'm not gonna do what you tell me." And then Jose Toda took it on. He remained, like the war ended, he came out of prison. Well, it didn't end when he was out of prison, but you know, it was still on. And then Daisaku Akida, who's alive now, he wrote a book about basically his whole life with Jose Toda and what Jose Toda did up until 1958 when he died. And he died at 58 years old because he was born in 1900. So, and that, what he's saying here is that is like a living Lotus Sutra now, because in that kind of novelized story about how they started the Soka Gakkai and how they used the tenets of Buddhism, it's like, well, that's how me and you are going to understand this now. Like, we don't need to know about like the jeweled stupas and like the Buddha's tongue unravel, like going around the universe. It's beautiful to understand, but like, how is it relevant and how can we use it to have our human revolution? And how can I deal with my anxieties and my depressions and like my problems right here, right now, on the 18th of August. And this is what it means by, and it doesn't have to be this book, but it's like, even this book right now, you know, it's like a living sutra, because it's and this conversation and other books are on the planet, non-Buddhist related in a sense, are just like living vibrational texts. Let me carry on. In recent years, Akida's novelized account of the development of the Soka Gakkai has been described as a sutra for our age. Something which resonates with Strand's message, a message which Strand believes will resonate across religions and cultures transcending the confines of Buddhism. It's really important, something I really want to stress on these calls. That I'm really not trying to convert people to Buddhism and stuff. It's actually about transcending all of this so that we can be the best society and interlock completely together with like no judgment, and but also to know the truth of our religions, man. Like, we're not stupid. A lot of us, like, we're the young ones, you know. So it's like yo, it's blowing me away to know that Shakyamuni didn't actually write the Lotus Sutra, and he know that I wouldn't have even known what that was, you know. But it's about his message being passed on. And yeah, the Lotus Sutra's message is therefore not confined to one text. It is an evolving expression of the incredible potential in human life, and therefore doesn't matter whether it was created by the historical Buddha or, as most likely is the case, was a synthesis of wisdom generated by wise and empowered individuals, practitioners of Buddhism many centuries later. Its recasting and regeneration through the millennia points to a different focus on its underlying humanistic values. Can any text be attributed to the Buddha with certainty? In fact, the questions surrounding the origins of the Lotus Sutra can be easily applied to any other work of the Buddhist canon attributing to Shakyamuni, including the Pali texts, which are the scriptures of the Theravada branch of early Buddhism. Theravada is the only surviving school of a multitude of 18 early Buddhist schools, and it claims that the Pali canon directly reflects the word of the Buddha. Theravadan Buddhists often claim that, as a result, they represent the true Buddha's teachings, and they cast doubt on the provenance of the Mahayana teachings as a later distortion of Shakyamuni's message. I experienced this firsthand in a talk I gave when, during the question and answer session, a Theravadan practitioner in the audience questioned my talk and me even being a Buddhist on this basis. And I've had that on Instagram all the time. You ain't a Buddhist. Modern research, however, paints a far less clear picture of the original source of the Pali texts, in a similar vein to the origins of Mahayana, though admittedly further back in history. At the time of Shakyamuni Buddha's life, there was no scripts with which to write down his teachings. Early Buddhist texts were passed down through oral tradition, and the Pali Canon was finally written down in the 1st century BCE, 300 to 400 years after the Buddha's passing. As a result, even the Pali texts cannot be directly attributed to the Buddha with any certainty. So that just blew out a whole school of Buddhism just there alone. Like, if you're going to say my school is based on 100% the fact that these are the words of Shakyamuni, and then you just prove it like that, it must be difficult. As a result, even the Pali text cannot be directly attributed to the Buddha with any certainty. Indeed, schools of Buddhism such as Theravada or even monastic communities of any kind do not seem to have existed in the early years of Buddhism's founding. In the early 300 BCE, Megasthenes, a Seleucid ambassador, visited South and Central Asia and described Buddhists approximately 100 years after Shakyamuni's death. As a dated independent source, Megasthenes' records is important and describes a variety of itinerant practitioners living in forests, visiting and begging in villages and staying in donors' houses in towns. There is no sign of an organized monastic community, which makes it likely that the Pali Canon developed his emphasis on monastic rules and references later, as the early Buddhist schools formed and consolidated the Buddhist communities, perhaps in response to competing development in Hinduism, which became more sophisticated and synthesized between 250 CE and 100 CE. Some scholars also suggest that karma and reincarnation were not inherently part of the Buddha's original message and were inserted into the Pali texts as they gained stronger influence in society due to Hinduism's development in this period. I'm going to carry on. I've got 1 page left. I have to. We've got 10 minutes. Perfect. A melting pot of ideas. It is perhaps wiser to see Buddhism in all of its elements as a growing and developing entity throughout its history, rather than the idea of one man in 5th century BCE India. This is the core of this Lotus Sutra. So when you go talk about Buddhism to your friends, you can be like, man, let me tell you something, yeah? This is not about Shakyamuni. It is perhaps wiser to see Buddhism in all of its elements as the growing and developing entity throughout history, rather than the idea of one man in 5th century BCE India. Buddhism developed not in isolation, but in a time and place where a melting pot of ideas, philosophies and religions were not merely existing side by side or competing against each other, but were actively influencing each other. J.M. Walsh's writings, based on this scholarly reference he cites, described a religious Silk Road in Central Asia where influences between Buddhism, Zoroastrianism, Greek philosophy and Hinduism can be readily seen. For example, the Buddhist Lord of the Dead, King Yama, who Nichiren refers to, is known as Yima in Zoroastrianism and is also presented as the teacher in ancient Hindu texts, the Katha-upanishad. In his masterwork, Dial In, Walsh paints a picture of the deep interconnectedness between all major religions and the source of their ideas. From a Buddhist perspective, all religions are human-made. So this involving interactive process should not come as much of a shock. In fact, as it points at commonalities and change, the message of universal common ground in our shared humanity can come to the core over dogmatic differences. I hope that by illustrating the organic process of creation, and I love that because this is what he's done so deeply, I hope that by illustrating the organic process of creation and development that the Lotus Sutra has undergone, we can see a broader, all-encompassing approach to the Buddhist teachings. And in turn, Nichiren's and the SGI's message of the preciousness and dignity of every human life. This is the key message of the Lotus Sutra. However, it was created. Perfect. So we've got 10 minutes. So next time, page 37, big angel number. Next time, we're going to start from chapter 2 and we're going to jump into who was the brother himself, Nichiren. So in about 5 minutes, and how incredible, how blessed do I feel to have 20 people with me. Honestly, thank you so much, every single one of you. I've got people from Portugal. I believe you're in Portugal, ain't you, Muna? I think we have people all over the place. You're not in Portugal? Okay, she's gonna tell me where you are. Kim G in Toronto. Wow. Morocco. Yeah. I don't know why I said Portugal, man. What the hell? All right. Wow. Toronto. All right, cool. So, do I have any questions, by the way? In 5 minutes, I'm gonna just chant, and if you feel guided, I'm not gonna turn all the mics on though, because that would be a complete explosion of sound. Okay, let me just give you some classic ranting for 5 minutes. What's going on in the world right now? So we're seeing karma repeating itself. We're seeing some major shifts on the news. It was my birthday and I've been away from everything, and suddenly I'm turning on the news and there's a new global pandemic, which is the the Taliban. Very interesting time. From a 3D perspective, very scary time. It's they're saying death to the West. They've just like took over, and like you're just seeing these brothers in all black, like in the council chambers and stuff, like talking like they're the prime minister and stuff. It's a time of distractions, is why I'm saying this. It's a time of it's a time when we just need to be strong. I said this last time. Yeah, we need to be doing everything that we can just to keep our mind as clear as possible. I advise everyone to keep an eye on the news. Never be one of them people that think, no, I've transcended that. That's not what we're here to do. We're very much here to be able to walk amongst the people, to be able to go, like just now, a minute ago, I just went into co-op, got some food, talking to the brother, and he's talking to me about how he's nervous about the Taliban and stuff. And if I hadn't updated myself with these world events, I wouldn't be able to kind of come from a higher perspective, and just because a lot of people I recognize in spiritual communities and stuff, they try and transcend it and like no, I don't want to pay attention to that, or I'm gonna create that reality if I keep focused on it. And it's not about staying focused on it, but it's definitely damn about understanding what's going on so that we can always be the light. How can we be the light in our community or our families, or in the garden parties when our families invite us? How can we be the light if we don't even know what's going on? And yeah, I'm not here to talk about kind of mad world events too much, but it's sometimes I catch myself just looking at the ceiling at night, just like, what is going on in this world? I feel like I wake up and it's like a dream now. Like sometimes, 2019 felt like a whole different reality illusion, and sometimes you just want to go back. But I also know that I would never want to go back to 2019, because look how much dirt has come to the surface now since 2019. That dirt was always there, always. It was just buried, so like it's just coming to the surface. So if anything, I'm like, yeah, we have to be grateful. And I guess the reason I'm just doing this, and the reason I'm praying for myself and the world and stuff, is we, as much as possible, we just got to encourage everyone as much as we can right now. Even if I can encourage you, I said this last time, get barefoot, walk in the park, try and just meet up with as many people as you can. Even if you just meet up with one person, you just hold a meditation, or just read a book together. Just do something that means like, just like do something for yourself right now that you can just like hold on to something. Like we need like still like a log to be holding on to in this sea, and yeah, man, I just love you all. I can only imagine if you're here right now. And according to Buddhism, I'll tell you something that I really love. So Shakyamuni and Nichiren, you have to bear with me because this is slightly hard to explain. It's a concept called Sanzen Jindengo. See Chris laughing. So Nichiren and Shakyamuni, he basically said, this is how many lifetimes we've had. Yeah, and it's going to stretch your mind now. Yeah, Sanzen Jindengo. Because we've been here so many times, but, it's not just like you've had 3 lifetimes. You was once like an elf, or you was once like a Roman. No. So he said, the Shakyamuni, to try and make us understand how he understood what's gone on. If you was to grind the entire planet, this entire planet that we're on, if you was to grind it to dust, and every single particle of dust represents 16 million years, yeah? That's 1 eon. An eon represents 16 million years. So you grind, and imagine just grinding this glass to dust, how many particles there would be. So you grind the whole earth to dust. That represents, and each dust particle represents 16 years. You take all of the dust, you put it in a bag, you go up into the universe, and then you travel past 1,000 planets. You don't stop. You just keep going, and every time you see a planet, you count it. So it's 2, 3, 4. You go past 1,000 planets. You take them 1,000 planets, you grind them all up into dust. You put that all in a bag. Each particle representing 16 million years. And only then can you start to understand how many lifetimes. And I'm like really trying to make this looser because it's like a whole page. He tries to make that's how many lifetimes we've had. More than all of the cosmos grinded into dust, each particle representing 60 million times. Because remember, time doesn't exist. So if there's no beginning and end, that's why he's trying to make us understand how many times we've been here. And so just know that if that's the case, Zanzen Jindengo, we've been here that many times. What karma is it for you and me to be here right now in the great agenda? If you're without going to, this is the great reset, agenda 21. 2021 is the year that everyone thought 2012 was. No, this is the real one. They've been planning this since the 17th century, definitely since 1964. What's going on right now? Without going deep, so I need to remember this is a Buddhist call, not my Instagram. And so I just all I'm saying is we're here for a reason. I know you're all leaders, and Katie, Heidi, Sally, like Kim. It doesn't mean you have to be a leader as in with a megaphone. It means you could be a leader by being you could be kind of an introverted person, but that means you're the leader of being able to listen to people. But it also means that at the crucial time, you will never let that introvertedness stop you from speaking out. That's what it means to be a leader, So you can be shy, you can be quiet. It doesn't mean you have to be, But be ready to always be prepared to speak out at the crucial moment. Do you know what I mean? And I hope that's what, you know what I mean, Angela? Angelina? Jamie? Alice? Gnocchi? Harley? So yeah, I'm gonna chant. What's the time? Alright, I'm gonna chant for 3 minutes, man. And please feel free to join me. So yeah, chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and really loosely it's translates to, I recognize that I am this entire universe. Nothing is more powerful than me. And one thing I'm going to suggest to people, and I can always send you a recording of me chanting. Again, like, in order for you to really experience this and want to come back to doing this, you need to have a conversation with the universe when you're praying. So when you're praying in your head, yeah, you're chanting, say it. Don't listen to this skinny chicken leg brother with dreads. Do not listen. You've got to literally say, yo, universe, like, show me proof. Why am I wasting my time? Like, show me. Like, I want undeniable proof. I mean, I'll give you an example of once, and it will be different for everyone. But one time, I told someone to do this, and it was like a proper roadman. Like, no, I ain't doing this. Like, this is bunness, man. This is stupid. And then I said to them, go on, chant for proof. And then the next day, the postman came to the door and they had a delivery for them. And the postman, he had these beads around his neck, and he was a Nichiren Buddhist, and it was his first ever shift on that block. And he was like, what? And from there, my friends never stopped chanting. So like, the proof comes in different ways, and I could tell you this in 1,000, but again, these are just words. I could be chatting absolute ras right now. You've got to experience it for yourself. So let me get my bell, we'll do it, and then I'll love you and leave you. All right. about 3 minutes. Let's do this. Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho 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 Renge Kyo. Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho 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 Renge Kyo. Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho 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 Renge Kyo. Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho 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 Renge Kyo. Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho 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 Renge Kyo. Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho 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 Renge Kyo. Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho 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 Renge Kyo. Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. Alright, family, I love you. One more time, I'm going to read the guidance real quick just to remind you of today's guidance, and it was that Buddhism is action. One meaning of Kyo, of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, is action. Without action, we cannot say that we are practicing Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. It would merely remain a concept. Only through action are we able to truly gain the great benefit of the mystic law. And action for me right now means taking a step back so I can come and make sure I've got my soul here for you, and I'm not arguing on Instagram about things I don't need to be wasting my energy on. Action needs to be authentic for you. Don't think it means you actually have to go out and start doing things. It means I'm going to take the action right now to cut off from this person who's really close to me. It could be your own mother or father, but I'm going to take that action for myself, for my sovereignty, and I'm going to do that. So that's what Buddhism means. It's about not just praying. It's like, okay, I've done that now. I've got the feeling. What can I now do? How can I take this charged energy out into my family, to my society, to my friends? You know, like I said, action for me is about going inwards. I'm going to get barefoot. I'm going to walk into the forest. I'm going to do what I know is going to be best for me. That's the action right now. So I can keep on going. This is a marathon. I'm only 28. You get me? I'm trying to be here to be 88, 98. So I love you so, so much. Thank you so much for the trust to be here on my second time. Yeah, man. I mean, the way we're going, we've done 2 chapters technically. I might be here till 2040, but I'm going to keep moving. And like I said, just keep going over the chapters, just keep reading and waken the Buddha, Clark Strand. Yeah, if you really want to just understand or something basic or basics of Buddhism. Is a good book. But yeah, I love you all, and I'm sure we'll all be in the DMs and telegramming it at some point. My beautiful, beautiful soul family. Thank you so much.